feel some kind of way. Listen, like, why aren't they calling me, right? It's an amazing day. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Andrea, and here on this channel, we talk about all things related to mature living for the woman over 50. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 7 tips that's going to help you transition as an empty nester. You may have a child who's about to graduate from high school and be headed off to college. You may have children already away, maybe in college, or have moved out, and you're really either wondering how to make that transition, what it's going to look like, or you're having challenges with that transition. Well, you're in the right space. I'm going to help and give you some tips for that on today. Now, I am an empty nester. My youngest child is a sophomore, ending up her sophomore year in college. So she's been away technically for 2 years or, 2 years in college. Of course, she comes home during breaks and during the summertime. But I've also been through this transition. I also have a 30-year-old. So I'm going to share some tips that have helped me transition as a single woman. But there also may be challenges in transitioning in your home, even if you're married or you have a significant other living with you. So I'm going to share some tips with you on today to make you, make this next chapter a really good and comfortable chapter for your life. Now, a lot of times as women, we have really dedicated so much of our entire life being time into our children, as we should, right? And with a balancing act, right? It's very important that we take care of ourselves along that journey as well. And so sometimes when our children really literally leave us for an extended period of time, we may begin to feel a void or even a little depression or even really a questioning, if you will, of what this next chapter of our life should look like. Now, in addition, if we have a significant other or you're dating, right, or in a relationship, whatever that looks like, it may also mean a transition in that relationship, right? Because we know that when children are involved, even older children, teenage children, they require some level of time. And so now you may have that time back for you and your mate. Now, this video is primarily for women because I'm going to talk from my experience as a woman, but it could be applicable to men as well. So, what they say, eat the meat and spit out the bones. Yes, eat the meat and spit out the bones and apply it where necessary, whether you're a single woman, I'm a divorced woman. I've been divorced for, 13 years, whether you're a single mom, divorcee, or you're in a relationship or in a marriage partnership. Just pick out what is for you. I'm sure you're going to find some tips in what I have to share with you on today. The first thing that I want to share is that it's so important to utilize this season to rediscover yourself. Because yes, as women, as I said earlier, we dedicate so much time and energy into our children as we should. And oftentimes we have lost ourselves, our interests, what to do with our extra time because maybe you didn't really even have any extra time, right? And now you have these gaps and periods of time that you're trying to fill or you're trying to determine what you should do next. So I want you to look at this period as a newfound freedom. I want you to take some time to sit down and think about all the things when raising your children that you wish that you could have done. It could have been traveling. It could have been certain hobbies or interests. It could have been simply more books that you wanted to read. It could be expanding or, extending your education. It can be a ton of things. But I want you to take some time, sit down and make a list of at least 10 things. And they can be simple or they can be grand. And it can be a list that you can begin to work towards in whatever way is necessary. This is a wonderful time to rediscover who you are. Now, if you already have hobbies and interests and you've been, somewhat doing those things along the way, now you have an opportunity to step it up another level, right? So maybe you can spend more time on that hobby, more time in those organizations, more time with travel or whatever it is, or maybe a class or another degree that you wanted to reach. This is now your time. Right. And I know if you have a college student, I'm very aware that, yes, they are coming back. But the reality is, in my current experience and past experience, each year they're really showing up less and less. Right. They're growing into adulthood. They want to be more around their peers. They may be having internships or traveling. So they really are in your home less and less. But it's a great thing, because we're developing these adults, these young adults, to spread their wings, right? And to be able to fly. And though it may be uncomfortable for our nest, right, as the mama bird or the papa bird, right, it is part of the process. And we definitely don't want to hinder their growth and hinder their progress. Now, the next thing is, it's really time to focus on self-care. And I want you to hear me out. There are levels to self-care, right? And yes, self-care can be massages, manicures, pedicures, getting your hair done, traveling. But self-care is really a mental, spiritual, physical, social aspect of our lives, right? And so now in this season, you really, really get to dial in personally. What do you need? I had to ask myself that question. Andrea, what's next? How are you ready to expand? How are you ready to pour more into your own life and fill your cup even more than what you've been doing, right? And I want you to remember, there's levels to everything. So if you never carved out time for yourself, now you can start carving out a little bit of time. You can get that manicure, you can get that pedicure, massage, or whatever you feel that you need in this season of your life. But if you've been doing those type of things all along, now you can begin to look at like an internal self-care from an emotional perspective. Maybe there's some things that you want to overcome, self-doubt, raise your self-confidence, raise your self-esteem, maybe reach higher for something in your career, or, get more knowledge, or you want to grow, you want to extend your social network. There's so many expansions to self-care. And this is the time that you can really focus in on yourself and give yourself exactly what you need. So I'm going to share a little bit about, when we talk about self-care, an aspect of what I went through just a couple of years ago. And I've kind of alluded to it a little bit in various vlogs and videos, but I want to share here. So when my daughter first went off to college, I was in a relationship at the time, and this was 2 years ago. And so what I noticed in terms of self-care was that once my daughter left, I really began to see some of the deficits, right? I began to see, even in my relationship, where I was feeling sort of stressed or overwhelmed during that year. In that year, the same year that my daughter went off to college, I had lost my brother earlier in that year, and all of the senior year activities, I was just kind of going and going and going, running my business, holding retreats, doing coaching programs, certifying people, all these things. And I really did not know how overwhelmed I was, how much I needed a break. And I really had to sort of check myself, right? And I've alluded before, that relationship did end maybe about 4 or 5 months later. And so for the following year and a half, I really began to focus deeper on myself and what I needed from a self-care perspective. So there are levels to this thing, you guys. And I just wanted to share that. Really, really take some time to look at your life in this season. If you're over 50, and some of you may not be over 50, right? But this is a time where you can really, really pour back into yourself on such a greater level. And so now I can say, ending up 2 years, my daughter's been, generally away in college. I was able this last year and a half to dial up in the self-care area of my life to bring me to new levels. And so it really, really is important. And I just wanted to take a moment to share my experience of elevating your self-care as an empty nester with you. Now, the next thing I want to share is that if you are in a relationship, this is a great time to reconnect with your partner or your spouse, right? And so we know that, listen, as I said earlier, children require time. Even as teenagers, they require attention. They're having activities if they're involved in sports or, high school activities, senior year, pictures, travel, spring breaks, all these things, right? And so now you may be looking at your partner with like, okay, so what do we do now? We don't have that distraction. Now we have to focus in. But that's a great time to reconnect, plan dates. And if you already had steady dates, more dates. Make a new wish list for the two of you. Make a new wish list of what you want, the areas that you want to grow and, elevate your level, elevate your relationship, if you will, to a whole nother level. Now, the next thing, I think this is paramount. And it's really about cultivating friendships. And I know when we're raising children, and especially if you're in a relationship or you're in a marriage, and you're working a full-time job or a part-time job, there's just a lot of things that you're doing in your own home. And you may not be able to, or may not have felt that you had the time to cultivate necessary relationships. But one of the things I have found that as I've gotten older, social connections and a sense of community is so important in our lives. And as an introvert, okay, let me tell you now, I am an introvert. I can stay home all day, reading books, doing things. I'm rarely ever bored. I understand how important it is for my spirit, my soul, and my mind to connect with others. And oftentimes I have to be very intentional about that area. And when I do that, I feel so much fulfillment when I'm out cultivating those acquaintanceships and friendships with the people that I care about. One of the things we don't want to do, and something that, being over 50, we can definitely think about, over the next 10 and 20 years in our life, what do we want that to look like? As our kids continue to mature and go off and develop their own families and their own career pursuits and their own travel, how do we want our lives to look? Right? In one of my favorite books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. So in this chapter of your life, what do you want it to look like in the next 10 or 20 years? We've got to reevaluate this season, right? Just as when we had children, we had to evaluate that season of parenthood, right? So now we're in a new season and we have to think about what it is we want to see for ourselves in the next 10, 20, 25 years and begin to pursue the things that are going to make that vision come true. So when you see yourself as a 75 or 70-year-old or 75 or 80-year-old, what do you want that life to look like? Who do you want to be surrounded by? Family, friends, travel, solo, by yourself, off in the woods, whatever floats your boat. And there's no judgment, but this is the time and season to think about it, right? And to really begin to develop relationships, acquaintanceships, social networks that can possibly help us in these next seasons on a variety of levels in our lives. So I know we talked earlier about rediscovering yourself, but we can also take advantage of new opportunities, right? On the job, career-wise, maybe even starting a business, writing a book, more time at your favorite volunteer organization or church activities. You have more time, and now there's more opportunities for you to flourish, maybe even flourish in those hobbies or interests, or as I said, career pursuits. This is a great season for opportunity. You have so much wisdom. You have so much experience. You have so much to give, and don't underestimate that. Do not underestimate this new season of your life. You have so much to share. You have so many gifts. You have so many talents, and the world is waiting on you. Now, here's an area depending on, your living arrangements and things of that nature. It may be a time to think about or actually start downsizing and decluttering depending on your age and depending on your situation and circumstance. And that can look like tangible items. It can look like your home, right? Your home or the type of home or the style of home that, you may want to change. Maybe you don't want to mow your lawn anymore, or, in the next 5 years, you may not want to hire somebody to mow your lawn or whatever that is. Or maybe you don't need the size of house that you have now, or whatever that may be. It's something to think about and consider. Also about decluttering things that are not necessary, right? Just something to think about in this season of possibly downsizing and or getting rid of things that no longer serve you in this season of your life. And I think that as Generation Xers and baby boomers, we're a lot different than millennials and Gen Zers, right? And I don't know if you've had that experience. If you have, I'd love to hear it in the comment section, because I have a millennial and a Gen Zer. My kids are 10 years apart. And they really have no allegiance, if you will, to holding on to anything. Right now, they're grateful sometimes of the things that I have held on to, but them personally and themselves, they could care less. Clothing, pictures, well, they have pictures, right? So much access to pictures, but tangible pictures, items, they have a very different mindset. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it's definitely something that we want to pay attention to and consider when we're thinking about downsizing and decluttering, because they're going to throw it out. Trust me when I tell you. And then the last thing, but definitely not the least thing, that I want to talk about today is staying connected with our children. And as I mentioned earlier, yes, they are growing, spreading their wings, creating relationships and friendships in peer groups at a totally different level on their own. And so they may not intentionally not communicate with us, right? And we may feel some kind of way. Listen, like, why aren't they calling me, right? But however, we got to remember the season of life that they're in. We were all there, right? And so one of the things that I think has been very helpful in both of my children, right? And I think it's been successful thus far at age 30 and almost 20, is that I've just stayed connected. Even when my daughter first went to college, and this may be a tip for some of you who have high schoolers, especially if they're going to be going away, maybe, an hour or two or more away from home. My daughter's 3 hours away. And so I will set up a date where I'm going to go down for the day, have dinner, reconnect, maybe do some shopping, help them pick up some items, because they're always begging and they need some money, they need something, right? That could be their little lure, food. They love food too, right? And during that time, we're just able to reconnect. I can kind of get some insight on how she's doing in school, how she's transitioning, and things of that nature, right? Now, as the second year, she was able to take her car to campus, and so she's been able to go freely, a lot more freer, which has been good. But I stay connected. I'm in their inboxes. I'm texting, even my oldest, right, who is local. So constantly I will, hey, want to have coffee? Hey, let's have breakfast. Let's do brunch. So I can just stay connected with them, right? And sometimes just listening. There's such a comfort with our parents who know us in and out. And I'm learning too in this season that I don't always have to give advice if they're not asking for it. Sometimes they just want a safe space to listen. And it also gives us some wisdom and insight on what they're doing well, what they're challenged with, and also how to go in prayer. I believe so much in the power of prayer. I don't necessarily have to always say something to them, but I can go and seek the Lord on their behalf, okay? Whether they know it or not, I can also pray with them in their presence and encourage them in that way. So even as they're growing, and I'm telling you, it can be an awkward feeling when our children are away and they're not calling us. But I don't think that it has anything to do with how they feel or a sense of abandonment or, not loving us. They're just in a totally different season of building their life. And we have to remember we were there too, right? But we don't have to allow that distance to be created or feeling resentful or whatever, all that negativity. Let us be the mature party and be proactive and reach out to them. And if they don't respond, cool, we've done our thing, right? But let's be mature. Let's learn how to stay connected, because one thing is for sure, they come back around. They realize a lot of things, right? And so just remember your own life. We've all been there in some way, shape, or form. It's development. And also remember this too, even physiologically. Young adults' brain, their frontal lobe, which is the part of their decision making, is not fully developed until like 25 years old. So all this craziness that sometimes we've experienced in our own life, okay, and our children may be seemingly to experience or make, decisions. It's part of the process, and we just need to be like a soft landing. Yet, we can give guidance now. Let me be very clear, right? But we can definitely be a safe space for them to land. I just think that's so important. So yes, lastly, staying connected with our children. So now let me talk about the pros. I mean, like just in my experience, right, about being an empty nester. Listen, you're talking about, I just feel such a great level of peace in this season. I have felt like it's top tier. I'm not even kidding you. Doing what I want, when I want, how I want, just being at peace. Of course, I'm still there for my children. We're still connected, but it's such a different level. And I am really embracing this season. I really, really am. My purpose pursuits, I have so much time and energy to give those things and cultivate, as we said earlier, friendships and relationships. And it's just top tier. And I flow around this home how I want. When I put something somewhere, it stays there. When I eat something or don't eat it, it stays there, right? Just little things. But I learned to find joy even in the simple things versus focusing on the negativity of it. So that has been my experience. And as I said, this is my daughter's second year. She's ending up. She'll be home in a couple weeks for the summer, and I'm going to embrace her. We have a great time together, but I recognize the season. She's going to be here for a couple of months, and then she's going to be doing her own thing once again. So embrace this season. So listen, I would love to hear your feedback in the comments. Are you concerned about your children going off to college? Or are you an empty nester and having a challenge with that season? Do you have some tips that you'd like to add to my list and share? I'd love, love, love to hear it in the comment section. I promise that I will respond. I just love interaction. So I want to thank you so much, first of all, for even subscribing. So if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Those of you who have helped me on this new YouTube channel, gain subscribers and gain views, I really, really, really appreciate you. I'm having such a good time in this process. And if you've been following me from the very beginning, I think you're seeing a little of my progress along the way, because I'm seeing some of my own progress. And listen, as I said, I'm new to all of this, but I'm having such a wonderful time, and hopefully you're enjoying the channel as well. So be sure to like the channel. As I already said, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button so you can get all future notifications when I upload my videos. Have a wonderful and blessed day, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.